Have you ever felt torn between two forces pulling you in opposite directions? On one side, a deep longing for boundless freedom. The desire to live on your own terms, to fly, create, and dream. On the other, the heavy weight of responsibility, duty, structure, commitment, stability. This tension isn't just existential discomfort. According to Carl Jung, it is the call of a powerful archetype residing in our collective unconscious. Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. Puer Aeternus isn't some vague philosophical metaphor. It's a psychological archetype, a living pattern within us all. It's the part of us that refuses to grow up, that clings to eternal youth, novelty, spontaneity, and limitless potential. But it's also the part that fears commitment, resists limitation, and avoids the grounding demands of adult life. In this video, we'll dive deep into the psychological reality of the eternal child. We'll explore its mythic roots in Jungian psychology, how it shows up in the modern world, and most importantly, how we can stop being ruled by it and instead transform its energy into something creative, resilient, and mature. This isn't a dry lecture on theory. It's an invitation to reflect, to observe, and to confront that part of you that secretly dreads responsibility but aches to live fully. And by the end, I'll share one of Jung's most powerful insights, an idea that might just be the key to breaking the cycle of avoidance and idealism, and stepping into a life that is grounded, authentic, and whole. Are you ready? Let's begin. Let's begin by unpacking the idea of Puer Aeternus. In Latin, it means eternal boy or eternal child. But this isn't about age. It's about attitude, psychology, and the emotional patterns that define a person's relationship with maturity. Carl Jung described the Puer Aeternus as an archetype, a deep, recurring structure in the human psyche that reflects a longing for youth, spontaneity, and freedom from responsibility. On the surface, this archetype glows with vitality. It's the part of us that dreams big, that refuses to settle, that believes in magic and infinite possibilities. It fuels artists, visionaries, travelers, entrepreneurs. It says, you don't have to be like everyone else. There is more to life than conformity. But beneath this inspiring light lies a darker truth. The eternal child resists grounding. It fears limitation. It sabotages routines, relationships, and long-term goals, because it equates stability with stagnation. What starts as a pursuit of freedom can quietly morph into a life of chronic avoidance. In today's world, this pattern is increasingly visible. Many live in a state of extended adolescence, not in age, but in orientation. They drift from job to job, idea to idea, relationship to relationship, always searching for the next hit of novelty. They romanticize potential, but struggle with follow-through. Commitment feels like a trap. Discipline feels like a threat. You might see this in others, or you might see it in yourself. The Puer Aeternus isn't inherently negative. Jung emphasized that this energy can be incredibly creative, even sacred, but when left unchecked, it becomes a form of spiritual immaturity, a refusal to accept the terms of reality. The real challenge is not to suppress the eternal child, but to engage with it consciously and eventually to integrate it. Because without that integration, we risk living in a beautiful illusion, a castle in the sky with no foundation, dreams without roots, potential without fulfillment. So now that we've defined it, the next question is, how does this archetype manifest in everyday life? What does it feel like to be caught in its grip? And how can we begin the work of transformation? Let's continue. In our modern world, the archetype of the Puer Aeternus is not just present, it's everywhere. It's reinforced by culture, technology, and the narratives we tell ourselves about success, identity, and meaning. We live in an age that romanticizes youth, glorifies spontaneity, and constantly urges us to chase the next big thing. Social media, in particular, becomes the playground for the eternal child. Algorithms reward novelty. Platforms highlight curated experiences of freedom, adventure, and perpetual self-discovery. Everyone seems to be traveling, changing careers, living their best life. And beneath that glossy surface lies a deep and growing fear. Of staying still, of committing to one path, of missing out. The Puer Aeternus thrives in this environment. It whispers, "You don't have to grow up. Just keep exploring. Keep starting over. Keep your options open." It masks itself as freedom, but often leaves us feeling more restless, more disconnected, and more alone. We see this archetype in people who resist long-term relationships, not out of a lack of love, but out of a fear of being known too deeply. In those who constantly change jobs, projects, or places to live, chasing that initial thrill. In the endless pursuit of self-optimization, self-expression, and self-branding, while quietly avoiding self-confrontation. At its core, the eternal child fears being ordinary. It fears responsibility not because responsibility is dull, but because it requires giving something up, the fantasy of infinite possibility. But Jung reminds us, the path to meaning is not through escaping limitation, it's through embracing it. Freedom, when untethered from responsibility, becomes chaos. And structure, when embraced with intention, can actually enhance freedom. When we choose, truly choose, we gain depth. The challenge, then, is to notice where this archetype is active in your life. Where do you run when things get hard? What part of you wants to stay in the idea of life, rather than the messy, grounded, lived reality of it? Recognizing the Puer Aeternus within you is not an accusation. It's an invitation to step closer to who you could become if you stayed, committed, and allowed yourself to grow. Every archetype has a shadow, and the Puer Aeternus is no exception. In fact, its shadow is particularly seductive because it wears the costume of beauty, freedom, and promise. But behind that mask often lies something far more destructive: avoidance, narcissism, and the quiet erosion of meaning. The shadow of the eternal child is the refusal to face discomfort. It's the voice that says, "Why try? Why commit? There will always be something better, somewhere else, someone else someday." Over time, this mindset corrodes trust, relationships, careers, and even our sense of identity. It promises endless beginnings, but delivers no meaningful conclusions. Carl Jung observed that the pure, when not integrated, often becomes trapped in a repeating pattern of escape. Whether it's emotionally fleeing a relationship at the first sign of conflict, abandoning a creative project when it ceases to be exciting, or quitting a job because structure feels suffocating, each act of flight deepens the shadow. This archetype also fears failure deeply, and rather than risk failing, it prefers to dream, to imagine, to stay in the realm of potential. It's safer there, but safe is not the same as alive. And here lies the core danger. When the eternal child dominates the psyche, we begin to live in fantasy. We become allergic to reality. And that disconnect can lead to profound dissatisfaction, depression, and alienation. Jung's insight wasn't to destroy the Puer Aeternus, but to bring its light and shadow into full view, to accept it as part of us, to stop romanticizing it blindly, and to start asking deeper questions. What am I afraid of losing if I grow up? What illusions am I unwilling to let go of? The shadow of the eternal child can only be transformed through awareness, through confronting the parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid. And paradoxically, it is through that confrontation that true maturity begins. Because growth isn't about losing the child. It's about guiding it. And to do that, we must first step out of its shadow. Let's keep going. If the shadow is where the eternal child hides, then integration is where it learns to grow. Carl Jung believed that the way forward is not to reject the Puer Aeternus, but to transform it, to lead it, gently but firmly, into maturity. This is the essence of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming a whole and integrated self. Individuation begins with awareness. It requires us to turn inward, to observe our patterns of avoidance, our resistance to commitment, our deep longing for freedom without consequence. It means asking questions we often avoid. What am I running from? What dream am I clinging to, simply because I'm afraid of living a real, imperfect life? The next step is responsibility, but not responsibility as burden, responsibility as devotion, choosing something, someone, or some path and staying with it. Commitment isn't the death of freedom. It's what gives freedom shape. It allows us to build something meaningful, to ground our dreams in action. Creativity is still part of the journey. In fact, when the eternal child is integrated, its energy becomes a source of incredible vitality. The difference is that this creativity now flows with purpose. It's not scattered across endless half-finished projects or impulsive decisions. It's focused, enduring, and real. This work is not easy. It requires patience, discipline, compassion for ourselves when we stumble. But it also brings a deep, quiet joy. The joy of knowing we are becoming who we are meant to be. To guide the eternal child within us is not to silence its voice, but to place it in dialogue with our adult self. The dreamer and the doer must meet. The artist and the architect. The child and the parent. And in that meeting, we find not perfection, but wholeness. Let's move deeper. If individuation is the path toward integration, then relationships are the mirror in which that work becomes visible. Carl Jung believed that we don't grow in isolation. We grow through connection. And for the eternal child, this can be the hardest terrain to navigate. Relationships demand vulnerability. They require commitment, honesty, and the ability to stay even when things become uncomfortable. But the Puer Aeternus resists this. It longs for passion, excitement, the high of the beginning, but not the slow, steady work of love. The eternal child doesn't fear intimacy because it's boring. It fears intimacy because it reveals. It reflects us back to ourselves. And that kind of reflection can be hard to face. Still, it's exactly through these mirrors, partners, friends, mentors, even conflicts, that we begin to see where the eternal child is active. We notice the moments we shut down, pull away, idealize someone, or blame them for our inner unrest. Each of these is a clue. Healing begins when we choose to stay. When we allow ourselves to be seen not just for our potential, but for who we are, flaws and all. When we stop asking others to carry the weight of our dreams, and instead become responsible for our own becoming. It's also in community that we find strength. Individuation is deeply personal, but it's not meant to be solitary. We need others to reflect back the truth of who we are, and sometimes to challenge the illusions we've been living in. The eternal child may resist the gravity of connection, but that gravity is what teaches us how to stand on solid ground. Jung often said that relationship is the crucible of transformation. It's where archetypes come alive. And for the Puer Aeternus, it's where fantasy is either broken or matured into something real. So if you found yourself withdrawing from closeness, fearing commitment, or chasing perfect connection only to be disappointed, ask yourself, what part of me is afraid to be seen? What part of me still believes that freedom means being alone? Because it's in staying, in showing up again and again, that the eternal child begins to trust that maturity doesn't mean abandonment. It means presence. Let's explore the world that shapes this archetype next. If individuation is the path toward integration, then relationships are the mirror in which that work becomes visible. Carl Jung believed that we don't grow in isolation. We grow through connection. And for the eternal child, this can be the hardest terrain to navigate. Relationships demand vulnerability. They require commitment, honesty, and the ability to stay even when things become uncomfortable. But the Puer Aeternus resists this. It longs for passion, excitement, the high of the beginning, but not the slow, steady work of love. The eternal child doesn't fear intimacy because it's boring. It fears intimacy because it reveals. It reflects us back to ourselves. And that kind of reflection can be hard to face. Still, it's exactly through these mirrors, partners, friends, mentors, even conflicts, that we begin to see where the eternal child is active. We notice the moments we shut down, pull away, idealize someone, or blame them for our inner unrest. Each of these is a clue. Healing begins when we choose to stay. When we allow ourselves to be seen not just for our potential, but for who we are, flaws and all. When we stop asking others to carry the weight of our dreams, and instead become responsible for our own becoming. It's also in community that we find strength. Individuation is deeply personal, but it's not meant to be solitary. We need others to reflect back the truth of who we are, and sometimes to challenge the illusions we've been living in. The eternal child may resist the gravity of connection, but that gravity is what teaches us how to stand on solid ground. Jung often said that relationship is the crucible of transformation. It's where archetypes come alive. And for the Puer Aeternus, it's where fantasy is either broken or matured into something real. So if you found yourself withdrawing from closeness, fearing commitment, or chasing perfect connection only to be disappointed, ask yourself, what part of me is afraid to be seen? What part of me still believes that freedom means being alone? Because it's in staying, in showing up again and again, that the eternal child begins to trust that maturity doesn't mean abandonment. It means presence. Let's explore the world that shapes this archetype next. So, what do we do with all of this? We've explored the Puer Aeternus as a psychological archetype, its gifts, its shadows, its cultural amplifiers, and its role in shaping how we engage with ourselves, with others, and with the world. But the work doesn't stop at understanding. The real transformation begins when we bring this insight into our daily lives. Carl Jung didn't want us to abandon the eternal child. In fact, he believed it holds a powerful key to vitality and meaning, but only if we choose to guide it, rather than be ruled by it. The child must meet the adult. The dream must meet discipline. Fantasy must meet form. To integrate the eternal child is not to kill it. It is to listen to it, love it, and lead it. It is to say, I see your longing for freedom, and I will honor it, not by running, but by creating a life that is worth staying in. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about choosing the harder path, the one where you show up, take responsibility, build something real, and find meaning not just in the highs, but in the ordinary moments that slowly shape a whole life. So ask yourself honestly, where is the eternal child alive in me? Where has it kept me safe? And where has it kept me small? And what would it look like to grow, not in spite of that child, but with it? This is the path of individuation, and it's a path only you can walk. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts, your reflections, your resistance. Let's keep the conversation alive. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep growing.